The Memory Book by Lorayne and Jerry Lucas. Summary and analysis by Brev Reds. Have you ever walked into a room and completely forgotten why you were there? Or maybe you've struggled to remember a friend's name even though you've met them several times? You're not alone. Memory can be a tricky thing. But what if I told you that you have the power to improve it? This book is your ultimate guide to unlocking the secrets of your mind and boosting your memory like a pro. Imagine being able to memorize long lists, impress your friends with your ability to recall every detail, or even ace that big test without breaking a sweat. Sounds dreamy, right? This book offers you practical techniques that are not only effective but also fun. It's packed with engaging stories, relatable anecdotes, and easy-to-follow exercises that will turn you into a memory master in no time. Take, for instance, the story of a young boy who struggled with his homework and barely scraped by in school. One day, he discovered a fascinating trick for remembering things. He started associating words with silly pictures and outrageous scenarios. Before he knew it, he was not just passing but thriving. He learned to turn abstract concepts into vivid images that danced in his mind, transforming the way he learned and remembered. This kind of creativity and playfulness is encouraged throughout the book, making learning enjoyable rather than a chore. One particularly memorable quote from the book states, "The mind is a canvas, paint it with the colors of your imagination." This perfectly captures the essence of what you'll learn here. You'll discover how to use your imagination to create mental images that stick. Have you ever tried to remember the words airplane and tree? Picture a giant tree flying through the sky instead of an airplane, and you'll never forget that association again. But it doesn't stop there. The book dives deep into memory techniques that have been used for centuries, tracing back to ancient orators who could recite lengthy speeches without notes. They used locations in their minds to link ideas together, a technique still relevant today. You'll learn how to create your own memory palace, where every room holds a piece of information you want to remember. Imagine walking into a room in your palace and instantly recalling the name of your new classmate because you've linked it to a memorable image of them wearing a funny hat in that room. You'll also learn how to remember appointments, shopping lists, and even foreign vocabulary, all by making silly associations and using creative imagery. Throughout the book, there are plenty of amusing stories that illustrate each technique. One story tells of a student who had to memorize a complicated list of items for a school project. Instead of feeling overwhelmed, he decided to create a ridiculous scene where each item came to life in a comedic way. By the end of the week, he not only remembered all the items but entertained his classmates with the quirky images he created. With exercises that challenge your creativity, you'll be amazed at how quickly your memory sharpens. By the time you finish this book, you'll have a toolbox of memory tricks at your disposal. Whether you want to impress your friends, excel in school, or simply remember where you left your keys, this book will help you achieve your goals. So why should you read this book? Because it's not just about improving your memory, it's about discovering the incredible abilities of your mind. It's a journey that will change the way you think and learn forever. Plus, who wouldn't want to be the person in the room who can recall every detail of a story or remember everyone's name? With a little practice and imagination, you can be that person. Chapter 1: Some History of the Art. Welcome to the fascinating world of memory. Have you ever wondered how some people can recall long speeches, lists of items, or even the names of hundreds of people they've just met? Well, it's all thanks to trained memory techniques that date back to ancient times. Imagine standing in a bustling marketplace in ancient Greece where orators would deliver speeches without a single note in sight. They relied on memory systems that allowed them to connect ideas with places in their minds, creating a mental map of their speeches. The ancient Greeks and Romans knew that a good memory was essential for success. They used a technique called loci, which means places. Picture this: an orator would walk through their home in their mind, associating each room with a part of their speech. When they needed to recall their words, they would take a mental stroll through their house, remembering each thought linked to a specific location. This technique is not just an ancient relic, it's a powerful tool that you can use today. One of the most renowned figures in memory training history is Simonides, who lived around 500 BC. He famously identified the bodies of banquet guests after a building collapse by recalling where they had sat. Imagine having that kind of memory. This story illustrates the crucial connection between memory and our daily lives. Whether you're preparing for a presentation or just trying to remember where you left your backpack, understanding how memory works can make a huge difference. Throughout the ages, memory techniques evolved, and even famous figures like Cicero and Shakespeare were known to use them. Shakespeare's memory theater is a delightful concept that suggests he created mental spaces where he could store characters and plots. By learning these techniques, you're tapping into a rich tradition that's helped countless people succeed. So, what's the key lesson from this chapter? Memory is not just a natural gift. It's a skill that can be developed with practice and the right techniques. Embrace the art of memory and you'll find it enriches your life in ways you never imagined. Chapter 2. In the first place, association. Now that you're fired up about memory, let's dive into the first technique, association. Have you ever heard someone say, "I forgot"? Well, what often happens is that they didn't really remember in the first place. This chapter teaches you how to create powerful associations that help you retain information. Think of association like a mental glue that binds new information to something you already know. For example, if you want to remember the name Rose, you could picture a beautiful rose flower blooming in your garden. When you think of the flower, the name will come rushing back. But here's the twist: the more ridiculous and vivid your associations, the better. If you were to picture a giant rose wearing sunglasses and riding a skateboard, you're much more likely to remember that name. This technique works because our brains remember images and stories better than abstract concepts. Let's explore a fun story that illustrates this technique. Imagine a student named Alex who needed to remember a grocery list: milk, eggs, and bread. Instead of just writing it down, Alex created a wild image in his mind. He pictured a giant carton of milk dancing while wearing a tutu, surrounded by eggs that were juggling bread. That silly scene made the items unforgettable. When it was time to go shopping, Alex simply had to recall the dance party in his mind to remember everything on the list. The key lesson here? Make your associations colorful, silly, and memorable. The more absurd the image, the stronger the memory. As you practice this technique, you'll notice how quickly your ability to remember improves. Chapter 3. The link. Now let's talk about the link system, a powerful technique that takes your memory skills to the next level. This method involves linking items together in a story-like fashion. Imagine you need to remember a list of items: apple, bicycle, and cat. Instead of memorizing them as separate entities, you create a wild story that connects them. Picture this: a cat rides a bicycle down the street while holding an apple in its paws. It's a funny image, right? By creating a narrative where each item leads to the next, you establish a chain of memories that's easy to recall later. When you think of the cat, you'll remember the bicycle, and then the apple will come to mind. The magic of the link system lies in simplicity and effectiveness. It works for any sequence of information you need to remember. For instance, if you were studying for a test and needed to remember the order of the planets, Mercury, Venus, Earth, and Mars, you might create a story where Mercury is racing past Venus, who's admiring Earth's beauty as they both watch Mars play soccer. The link system is also a great way to impress your friends. Imagine telling them about your memory palace, where planets play sports together. You'll not only remember the planets' order, but you'll also entertain them with your creativity. What's the key lesson from this chapter? Connect items through imaginative narratives, and you'll find it much easier to recall them later. Start linking today, and watch your memory skills soar. Chapter 4. Substitute words. In this chapter, we explore the substitute words technique, which is perfect for remembering names, vocabulary, and even complicated terms. Have you ever met someone and immediately forgotten their name, or struggled to memorize a challenging word? The substitute words technique is your secret weapon. This method involves finding a word or phrase that sounds like the name or term you want to remember. For example, let's say you meet someone named April. You could think of a grape to create a visual link. Picture a giant grape dressed as a calendar, holding a sign that says April. Not only is it amusing, but it also helps you remember. Let's look at another example. If you want to remember the word pterodactyl, which is a type of dinosaur, you could break it down into tear and dactyl. Picture a dinosaur that's crying tears while trying to dance the dactyl dance. The silliness of the image makes it much easier to recall. One fun story involves a student who needed to remember the word cantaloupe. Instead of stressing out, they thought of cantaloupe. Picture a giant cantaloupe trying to escape a wedding ceremony. By creating such vivid imagery, they not only remembered the word, but also had a great laugh while doing it. So what's the key lesson from this chapter? Use substitute words to create funny and memorable images for names and vocabulary. This technique will not only boost your memory but also make learning more enjoyable. Chapter 5: Long Words, Appointments and Errands, Shopping Lists. Welcome to the world of long words and lists. Have you ever felt overwhelmed by complex vocabulary or a long list of errands to run? Fear not. This chapter is all about turning those daunting tasks into manageable pieces. Let's start with long words. They can seem like a mountain to climb, but with the right strategies, you can conquer them. For example, let's take the word anti-disestablishmentarianism. It's a mouthful, right? Instead of being intimidated, break it down. You could create a silly story about an anti-distant elephant who is establishing a man in a tarry situation. Picture that elephant in a tuxedo, trying to impress a crowd while being hilariously clumsy. By associating the long word with a vivid image, you'll find it easier to recall. Next, let's tackle appointments and errands. Have you ever made a list but then misplaced it or forgot to check it? Here's where the memory tricks come into play. Use the link system to connect your errands in a story format. If you need to remember to pick up the dry cleaning, buy milk, and call your friend, create a narrative. Imagine your friend wearing a giant milk carton as a hat while holding your dry cleaning like a superhero cape. Each time you think of this quirky scene, the errands will come flooding back. A great anecdote illustrates this point. Picture a busy mom named Sarah who had a million things to do. One day, she decided to link her errands together. She imagined herself riding on a giant milk carton, flying into the dry cleaners, and then landing at her friend's house to share a laugh. The next day, when she went shopping, she didn't forget a single item. By turning her errands into a fun adventure, she not only remembered them but also enjoyed the process. So, what's the key lesson from this chapter? Long words and lengthy lists don't have to be scary. Break them down, create vivid associations, and turn your errands into stories. You'll be amazed at how easy it is to remember everything without feeling stressed. Chapter: Speeches. Now let's talk about something that strikes fear into the hearts of many: speeches. Whether it's a presentation in class or a toast at a family gathering, speaking in front of others can be nerve-wracking. But with the right techniques, you can deliver a speech that captivates your audience and boosts your confidence. First off, it's essential to understand that memorizing a speech word for word can lead to disaster. Imagine standing in front of a crowd, panicking because you forgot a single word. Instead, you should focus on understanding the main ideas and creating a flow of thoughts. This approach allows you to speak naturally and engage with your audience. To prepare for a speech, start by writing out your main points. Then, choose key phrases or words that remind you of each point. Think of these as the pillars of your speech. For example, if you're giving a presentation on the importance of recycling, your key phrases might be reduce, reuse, and recycle. Let's bring this to life with a fun story. Imagine a high school student named Tim, who was terrified of speaking in public. Instead of memorizing every word, he decided to use the link system. He created a story about a superhero named Captain Recycle who travels the world teaching people to reduce waste. Each point of his speech became a chapter in Captain Recycle's adventures. When it was time to present, Tim only needed to think of Captain Recycle to remember everything he wanted to say. Not only did he deliver a fantastic speech, but he also had fun doing it. An important quote to remember is, "A great speech is not just about the words, it's about connecting with the audience." When you speak from the heart and share your passion, the audience will be more engaged. What's the key lesson from this chapter? Don't stress about memorizing every word. Focus on main ideas, use key phrases, and create engaging stories. Your confidence will grow, and your audience will appreciate your authentic delivery. Chapter 7: Foreign and English Vocabulary. Welcome to the exciting realm of languages. Have you ever tried to learn a new language and felt completely lost with all the new vocabulary? You're not alone. Fortunately, this chapter introduces you to techniques that make learning foreign and English vocabulary a breeze. One of the best strategies is to use the substitute words method we discussed earlier. This time, you'll apply it to languages. For instance, if you want to remember the French word for bread, which is pain, picture a giant loaf of bread sitting in a frying pan. The sillier the image, the better it will stick in your mind. Let's look at another example. The Spanish word for cat is gato. You could create an amusing picture of a cat wearing a funny hat eating a taco. Instantly, you'll remember that gato means cat because of your vivid, silly scene. Now, let's dive into an entertaining story. Picture a student named Lily who decided to learn some basic Italian. Instead of feeling overwhelmed, she turned every new word into a silly image. When she learned the word cane, she imagined a dog dressed as a cane, walking around town with a top hat. By associating each word with a memorable image, Lily found herself excited to learn more and more. This technique also works for English vocabulary. If you encounter a challenging word, break it down and create an image that connects the sounds to something familiar. For example, if you want to remember the word loquacious, picture someone with a large mouth chatting away while they're on a quest to find a caution sign. The key lesson from this chapter: learning vocabulary can be fun and engaging when you use creative images and associations. Embrace your imagination and watch your vocabulary grow. Chapter 8: Names and Faces. Now, let's tackle a common challenge: remembering names and faces. Have you ever met someone and immediately forgotten their name? It happens to everyone. This chapter provides you with practical techniques to remember names and connect them to faces, so you never have to feel embarrassed again. The first step is to focus on the name when you hear it. If someone introduces themselves as Jack, make an effort to really hear it. If you're unsure, don't hesitate to ask them to repeat it. It's perfectly okay to say, "I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name." People appreciate the effort you're making to remember them. Next, use the substitute words technique. Remembering names is like a game. If you meet someone named Rose, you could think of a rose flower. Make it silly. Picture a rose wearing a crown and throwing a party. Every time you see that person, the image of the rose will come to mind. Now, let's consider a delightful story. Meet Alex, a friendly guy with a terrible memory for names. One day, he decided to change that by using the techniques learned in this book. He met a new coworker named Sam. Instead of forgetting, he pictured Sam as a samurai with a sword. The next time he saw Sam, he greeted him with a big smile and said, "Hello, samurai." Sam laughed, and the two became friends. By turning names into memorable images, Alex not only remembered Sam's name but also made a lasting impression. An important quote to keep in mind is, "A name is the sweetest sound to a person's ears." When you remember someone's name, it shows that you value them and the connection you share. So, what's the key lesson from this chapter? To remember names and faces, actively listen, create silly associations, and don't be afraid to ask for clarification. With practice, you'll become a name recognition superstar. Chapter 9: Absent-mindedness. Have you ever walked into a room and completely forgotten why you went in there? Or perhaps you've misplaced your phone, only to find it was in your pocket the whole time. You're not alone. Absent-mindedness is something we all experience. This chapter is all about understanding why it happens and how to combat it with some clever memory techniques. Absent-mindedness often occurs when our minds are overloaded with information or distractions. Picture this. You're trying to remember your friend's birthday while also thinking about that math test coming up, the movie you want to watch, and what you'll have for dinner. It's no wonder your brain feels like it's on a roller coaster, bouncing between thoughts. To tackle absent-mindedness, the first step is to practice being present. This means focusing on one thing at a time. The next time you meet someone new, make a conscious effort to look them in the eye and really listen when they say their name. If you're thinking about something else, you might miss it entirely. An interesting story illustrates this idea perfectly. Meet Jamie, a student who often lost track of where he left things. One day, he decided to change his approach. Instead of multitasking, he focused on one task at a time. When he put his backpack down, he said out loud, "I'm putting my backpack here." Later, when he couldn't find it, he recalled exactly where he had placed it, thanks to his new habit. By verbalizing his actions, he created a mental anchor that helped him remember. Another useful tip is to create routines. For example, Always put your keys in the same spot by the door, or set reminders on your phone for important tasks. Routines help reduce the clutter in your mind, making it easier to remember what you need to do. The key lesson here is that absent-mindedness can be reduced by being present, practicing mindfulness, and establishing routines. When you focus on one thing at a time, you'll find that your memory improves dramatically, and you'll be less likely to misplace things. Chapter 10. Long-digit numbers. Let's face it, long-digit numbers can seem like a foreign language. Whether it's a phone number, a password, or a series of statistics for a project, remembering numbers can be daunting. This chapter introduces you to techniques that will make memorizing long-digit numbers a breeze. One effective method is to turn numbers into meaningful images or associations. For instance, let's say you need to remember the number 435. You could think of it as 4 elephants, 3 monkeys, and 5 bananas. Picture a scene with 4 elephants dancing with 3 playful monkeys who are tossing 5 bananas in the air. The silliness of the image makes it memorable. Another powerful technique involves breaking long numbers into smaller, manageable chunks. Instead of trying to memorize 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 0, break it down into smaller groups: 123, 456, and 7,890. You can even create a story to link these chunks together. Imagine a race where the first group is sprinting, the second group is cheering them on, and the last group is a group of fans holding giant foam fingers. Here's a fun anecdote to illustrate this point. A student named Mia had to memorize her friend's phone number, which was 98765432210. Instead of stressing, she broke it down into 3 parts: 987, 654, and 3,210. She imagined a giant robot with 3 layers, a massive robot holding a giant ice cream cone while roller skating. When Mia needed to recall the number, she just pictured the robot and the ice cream cone, and it all came back to her. The key lesson from this chapter is to transform numbers into images and break them into smaller chunks. By turning digits into creative stories, you'll find that remembering long-digit numbers becomes second nature. Chapter 11. The Peg. Welcome to the Peg system, a fantastic tool for memorizing lists, sequences, and more. If you ever struggled to remember a grocery list or a series of steps for a project, this chapter is for you. The Peg system works by using a predetermined list of pegs, or keywords, that you can hang new information on. Think of pegs as hooks, where you can attach new ideas to something you already know. For example, let's say your peg list is based on the numbers 1 to 10. You could assign a word to each number, like this: 1 sun, 2 shoe, 3 tree, 4 door, 5 hive, 6 sticks, 7 heaven, 8 gate, 9 line, 10 hen. Now, if you need to remember a shopping list that includes apples, bread, and milk, you can visualize each item connected to the pegs. For instance, imagine the sun shining brightly on an apple, a shoe filled with bread, and a hive overflowing with milk. The more vivid and silly your images, the better. Here's an entertaining story that emphasizes the peg system. Meet Oliver, a student who had a tough time remembering his class schedule. Instead of panicking every morning, he made a peg list using the numbers 1 to 5. For his first class, he pictured the sun wearing glasses, solving equations. For his second class, he pictured a shoe bursting with colorful potions. Each peg helped him recall his schedule easily, and he never forgot a class again. The key lesson from this chapter is that the peg system is a powerful way to enhance your memory. By using visual pegs, you can effectively remember lists and sequences, making your life a whole lot easier. Chapter 12. Style numbers, prices, telephone numbers. Now that you've mastered the peg system, let's dive into how to apply these techniques to style numbers, prices, and telephone numbers. In a world filled with digits, it's essential to have strategies for remembering these important numbers that pop up in our daily lives. Just like we did with long-digit numbers, we can use the peg system to remember style numbers and prices. Let's say you're shopping for clothes, and the price tags have a style number of. Instead of getting lost in the numbers, you can break them down using your peg list. For example, you can link the number 1 to the sun, 2 to a shoe, 3 to a tree, and so on. Picture the sun wearing a stylish outfit that includes a shoe made from tree bark and covered in flowers. This silly image makes the style number unforgettable. Now, let's talk about telephone numbers. They can be challenging to remember, especially when they have long sequences of digits. But with the peg system, you can break them into smaller parts. For instance, if you need to memorize the number 555 to 1234, think of it as 555, 1, 2, and 34. Here's a story that brings this technique to life. Sarah had to memorize her new friend's phone number, which was, instead of stressing out, she turned it into an adventure. She pictured 3 sons playing games, a shoe that was doing cartwheels, and a line of people waiting to join in on the fun. By creating this imaginative scene, she could recall the number whenever she needed it. The key lesson from this chapter is that the peg system can be applied to style numbers, prices, and telephone numbers. By using imaginative images and breaking numbers into smaller parts, you'll find that remembering these digits becomes much more manageable and entertaining. Chapter 13. Playing cards. Have you ever played a card game and completely blanked out on the order of the cards? Or maybe you struggled to remember the rules and ended up getting lost in the shuffle? Fear not. In this chapter, we're diving into the world of playing cards and how to master them using clever memory techniques that will have you shuffling with confidence in no time. Imagine you're at a party, and someone challenges you to a card trick that requires you to remember the order of a 52-card deck. Sounds daunting, right? But with the right strategies, you can turn this challenge into a fun game. One of the best techniques to use is the peg system. This method involves associating each card with a familiar word or image. Let's say you decide to assign a peg word to each card in the deck. For example, you could use ace equal to ace, 2 equal to shoe, 3 equal to tree, 4 equal to door, 5 equal to hive, 6 equal to sticks, 7 equal to heaven, 8 equal to gate, 9 equal to line, 10 equal to hen, jack equal to jack-o'-lantern, queen equal to queen bee, king equal to King Kong. Now, when you see the ace of spades, you can picture a giant ace sitting in a shoe with a tree looming over it. The silliness of this mental image makes it memorable. Here's an entertaining story to illustrate this technique. Meet Jake, a young magician who wanted to impress his friends with his card tricks. Instead of memorizing the order of the deck in a boring way, he created a wild story involving his favorite superheroes. The Ace of Hearts became his friend in a heart-shaped costume, while the 2 of Spades was a pirate ship sailing through the clouds. By linking the cards to a fun narrative, Jake could recall the entire deck effortlessly and wow his friends with his skills. Another effective technique is the link system, where you connect the cards together in a story. For example, if you have the Ace of Hearts, followed by the 2 of Diamonds, and then the 3 of Spades, imagine the ace handing a diamond to a 3-headed monster. The more bizarre and colorful your story, the easier it will be to remember. The key lesson from this chapter is that playing cards can be easily memorized using the peg and link systems. By transforming cards into vivid characters or stories, you'll have a blast recalling their order and impressing everyone with your card tricks. Chapter 14. Weekly Appointments, Days of the Week. Now that you've mastered the art of card memory, let's tackle something just as important: keeping track of your weekly appointments. Life can get busy, and it's easy to lose track of important dates. But with the right memory techniques, you can stay organized and ensure you never miss an important event. The first step in managing your weekly appointments is to create a visual calendar in your mind. Picture each day of the week as a room in a giant house. For example, imagine Sunday as a cozy living room, where you relax and recharge. Monday could be a bright office filled with papers and responsibilities, while Tuesday might be a kitchen where you prepare meals and snacks. Each room represents a different day, and you can decorate them with specific appointments or tasks. Let's say you have a big test on Wednesday and a dentist appointment on Friday. Picture yourself in the cozy living room, preparing for the test by studying. On Tuesday, imagine yourself in the kitchen, baking cookies and suddenly remembering that you need to leave for the dentist on Friday. Visualize a giant toothbrush reminding you about the appointment. By linking your tasks to specific days in your mental house, you'll find it much easier to remember what you need to do. An entertaining anecdote illustrates this idea perfectly. Meet Maya, a busy student with a packed schedule. Instead of losing track of her commitments, she decided to create her mental house for the week. She decorated each room with colorful sticky notes, each representing an appointment. Her friends thought it was hilarious when they saw Maya visiting her mental rooms to remind herself of what was due. By the end of the week, she had aced all her assignments and felt more organized than ever. Another useful tip is to establish a weekly review. At the end of each week, take a moment to reflect on what you accomplished and what's coming up. This simple practice can help reinforce your memory and keep you on track. The key lesson from this chapter is to visualize your weekly appointments by creating a mental house for each day. By associating tasks with specific rooms, you'll boost your ability to remember what you need to do throughout the week. Chapter 15, Anniversaries, the Zodiac, Historical Dates. Now we're diving into a treasure trove of important dates, anniversaries, zodiac signs, and historical events. Remembering these dates can be a challenge, but with some creative memory techniques, you can keep track of all the important moments in your life. Let's start with anniversaries. Do you have a special date coming up, like a birthday or an anniversary? Instead of simply trying to remember the date, create a meaningful association. For instance, if your parents' anniversary is June 15th, picture them having a picnic in a sunny park on that day. Imagine the sun shining brightly as they celebrate their love. By creating a vivid image, you'll find it easier to remember the date. Now, let's move on to the zodiac signs. There are 12 signs, and you can use the peg system to remember them. For example, you could assign words or images to each sign: Aries, airplane; Taurus, tortoise; Gemini, gem; Cancer, can of soup; Leo, lion; Virgo, virgin; Libra, library; Scorpio, scorpion; Sagittarius, sled; Capricorn, cap; Aquarius, aquatic fish; Pisces, pie. When someone mentions their zodiac sign, imagine a scene involving that peg. If your friend is a Leo, picture a lion wearing sunglasses at the beach. The silliness will help you recall their sign in a fun way. Now let's talk about historical dates. Remembering significant events can seem overwhelming, but you can use the link system to create a story connecting them. For example, if you want to remember that the Declaration of Independence was signed in 1776, you could imagine a giant declaration wearing a wig and signing a huge paper in a crowded room filled with people wearing colonial outfits. Here's an amusing story to illustrate this point. A student named Jamie was tasked with remembering key historical dates for a history test. Instead of stressing out, Jamie turned each date into a fun story. The signing of the Declaration of Independence? That was a party where everyone was dancing while dressed as historical figures. By the time the test came around, Jamie was not only able to remember the dates, but also shared the stories with classmates, making the whole experience more enjoyable. The key lesson from this chapter is to create meaningful associations for anniversaries, use peg words for zodiac signs, and develop stories for historical dates. By visualizing and linking these memories, you'll find it easy to recall important dates and events in your life. Chapter 16, The Alphabet and Picturing Letters. Welcome to the final chapter of our memory journey. In this chapter, we'll explore the alphabet and how picturing letters can enhance your memory even further. Have you ever found yourself struggling to remember names or words that start with specific letters? Fear not, because this chapter will help you turn letters into memorable images. One effective technique is to create a visual alphabet, where each letter corresponds to a specific image or word. For example, you might associate A equal to apple, B equal to ball, C equal to cat, D equal to dog, E equal to elephant, F equal to fish, G equal to giraffe, H equal to hat, I equal to ice cream, J equal to jelly bean, K equal to kite, L equal to lion, M equal to monkey, N equal to nest, O equal to octopus, P equal to pizza, Q equal to queen, R equal to robot, S equal to sun, T equal to turtle, U equal to umbrella, V equal to violin, W equal to whale, X equal to xylophone, Y equal to yo-yo, Z equal to zebra. Now, when you hear a word or name, you can picture the first letter and its corresponding image. For instance, if you need to remember the name Sam, you can visualize a son wearing a hat and playing with a monkey. The creativity of the images helps anchor the name in your memory. Imagine a student named Alex who needed to remember a list of items starting with different letters. Instead of writing them down, Alex created a story using the visual alphabet. For example, apples in a basket, bouncing balls, and cats chasing butterflies. By picturing this whimsical scene, remembering the items became a breeze. Another fun way to reinforce this technique is through a game. Challenge yourself or your friends to come up with words that start with each letter of the alphabet. For every letter, create a corresponding image and share it with the group. The laughter and creativity will make the experience memorable. The key lesson from this chapter is that picturing letters and creating a visual alphabet can significantly enhance your memory. By linking letters to vivid images and engaging in fun activities, you'll find it easier to remember names, words, and lists. Chapter 17. Memorizing a speech. Are you ready to dive into the world of public speaking? Imagine standing in front of your classmates, your heart racing, palms sweaty, and thoughts swirling in your head. Memorizing a speech can feel like a monumental task, but with the right techniques, you can deliver a presentation that not only impresses your audience, but also boosts your confidence. The first step to memorizing a speech is to break it down into smaller sections. Think of your speech as a delicious pizza. Instead of trying to eat the entire pizza in one bite, you can slice it into manageable pieces. This way, you can focus on one section at a time. For instance, if your speech is about your favorite book, divide it into 3 parts: an introduction, a summary of the plot, and your personal thoughts. Let's add some creativity to the mix. One effective technique is to create a mental image for each section. Imagine your introduction as a bright sun shining over a book, the plot summary as a roller coaster ride through the story, and your personal thoughts as a cozy reading nook with pillows. By visualizing these scenes, you'll create a mental roadmap that makes it easier to remember each part of your speech. Here's an entertaining story to illustrate this technique. Meet Tara, a high school student who had to give a speech about environmental conservation. Instead of stressing over every word, she broke her speech into sections and created images for each part. The introduction was a giant tree. The plot summary was a river flowing smoothly, and her conclusion was a hopeful garden filled with flowers. When it was time to present, Tara simply walked through her mental garden, recalling each part with ease, and her audience was captivated. Another helpful tip is to practice out loud. Rehearsing in front of a mirror or a family member can help solidify your memory. As you practice, pay attention to your tone and body language. Imagine yourself as a confident speaker, and before you know it, you'll feel more comfortable delivering your speech. The key lesson from this chapter is that breaking your speech into manageable sections and creating vivid mental images can make memorization a breeze. With practice and visualization, you'll become a confident speaker and impress your audience. Chapter 18. Memorizing lists. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where you needed to remember a long list of items? Whether it's a grocery list, a list of things to pack for a trip, or even a set of instructions, memorizing lists can sometimes feel overwhelming. But don't worry. There are effective techniques to help you recall lists with ease. One of the best strategies for remembering lists is to use the link system. This technique involves creating a story that connects each item on your list. For example, let's say you need to remember to buy milk, eggs, and bread. Instead of just writing them down, you can create a silly story. Picture a giant carton of milk riding a bicycle, wearing a helmet made of eggs, and balancing a loaf of bread on the handlebars. The more outrageous and vivid your story, the easier it will be to remember. Another useful technique is to categorize your list. For instance, if you're packing for a camping trip, you could group items into categories like food, gear, and clothing. Visualize each category as a separate area in your mind. Imagine the food section filled with a picnic blanket, sandwiches, and snacks, while the gear section is a mountain filled with tents and flashlights. By organizing your list into categories, you'll find it easier to remember each item. Let's look at a fun story that highlights this technique. Meet Max, a young adventurer planning a camping trip with his friends. Instead of stressing about what to pack, he decided to create a story for each category. In the food category, he pictured a giant picnic basket filled with sandwiches and snacks. In the gear category, he visualized a mountain of tents, flashlights, and sleeping bags. When it was time to pack, Max simply walked through his mental campsite, recalling each item effortlessly. The key lesson from this chapter is that using the link system and categorizing your lists can make remembering them much easier. By turning items into stories and organizing them in your mind, you'll be able to recall everything you need without a hitch. Chapter 19. History and Dates. Now let's step into the fascinating world of history. Remembering dates and events can often feel like trying to memorize a long, complicated poem. But with a few memory techniques, you can turn historical dates into engaging stories that stick in your mind. One effective technique is to create a timeline in your mind. Imagine a colorful road stretching out in front of you, with important dates marked along the way. For example, if you want to remember that the Declaration of Independence was signed in 1776, visualize a giant declaration paper sitting on the road, waving like a flag. You can decorate your timeline with illustrations for each significant event, making it a fun and creative way to remember history. Another helpful strategy is to use the link system to create vivid stories connecting historical events. For instance, if you need to remember that the Titanic sank in 1912, you could imagine a giant ship crashing into a huge iceberg shaped like the number 12. The silliness of the image makes it memorable and helps anchor the date in your mind. Here's a delightful story to illustrate this technique. Meet Emma, a student preparing for her history exam. Instead of memorizing dates in a boring way, she decided to turn them into a fun adventure. The signing of the Declaration of Independence? She pictured a massive party where a giant declaration was dancing with a group of colonists, while fireworks exploded in the background to celebrate the year 1776. By creating these vibrant mental images, Emma was able to recall each date and event during her exam with ease. The key lesson from this chapter is that using timelines and the link system can transform the way you remember historical dates. By creating engaging stories and vivid images, history can become not only easier to remember but also a lot more fun. Chapter 20. Using memory techniques for learning. Let's wrap up our memory journey by exploring how you can apply these techniques to your everyday learning. Whether you're studying for a test, trying to grasp a new concept, or simply wanting to remember important information, memory techniques can help you learn more effectively. One of the best approaches is to combine different techniques. For example, when studying for a science test, you could create a mind map. Start with the main topic in the center and branch out with subtopics. For each subtopic, use the link system to connect it to a memorable image or story. This way, you'll have a visual representation of the material that makes it easier to recall. Another helpful strategy is to teach what you've learned. When you explain a concept to someone else, you reinforce your own understanding. Picture yourself as the teacher, standing in front of your classmates, confidently explaining a complicated topic. The act of teaching helps solidify your memory and boosts your confidence. Let's consider a fun story involving a student named Leo. Leo was struggling to remember his math formulas for an upcoming exam. Instead of panicking, he decided to create a mind map. He started with the main topic, geometry, and branched out with formulas related to shapes. For each formula, he created a silly image, a triangle wearing a party hat for the area formula, and a square doing a dance for the perimeter formula. When it was time for the exam, Leo visualized his mind map and easily recalled each formula. The key lesson from this chapter is that combining memory techniques like mind mapping and teaching others can enhance your learning experience. By making learning interactive and engaging, you'll find that information sticks with you much better. Chapter 21. The Art of Storytelling. Welcome to the world of storytelling. Every great memory technique can be enhanced through the art of storytelling. Whether you're trying to remember facts for a test or simply want to engage your friends during a conversation, weaving information into a narrative can make it stick in your mind like glue. Think about it. When was the last time you heard a story that captivated you? Maybe it was a thrilling tale of adventure or a heartwarming story that made you smile. Stories have a way of capturing our attention and making information memorable. So how can you use storytelling to boost your memory? Start by creating a narrative around what you want to remember. For instance, if you need to recall a list of items for a school project, turn each item into a character in your story. Let's say you need to remember an apple, a notebook, and a pencil. You could create a story where a clever apple named Annie teams up with Nora the notebook and Penny the pencil to solve a mystery at school. As they embark on their adventure, you'll find it much easier to remember each item because they're now part of a fun tale. Here's a delightful story to illustrate this idea. Meet Sam, a student who had to memorize a presentation about the solar system. Instead of just reciting facts, Sam created a story where each planet was a character at a cosmic party. Mercury was a speedy race car, Venus was a glamorous fashionista, and Jupiter was a giant with a booming voice. By turning the planets into lively characters, Sam not only remembered the order of the planets but also delivered an entertaining presentation that his classmates loved. Another fantastic approach is to use the story structure, beginning, middle, and end. Start with an introduction that sets the scene, then move into the main conflict or challenge, and finally, wrap it up with a resolution. This structure helps you organize information logically, making it easier to remember. The key lesson from this chapter is that storytelling can transform how you remember information. By turning facts into engaging narratives, you'll find that your memory improves while also having a great time sharing your stories with others. Chapter 22: Visualizing Information. Let's jump into the power of visualization. Have you ever tried to remember something by picturing it in your mind? Visualization is a powerful tool that can significantly enhance your memory. The brain loves images, and when you turn information into vivid pictures, it's easier to recall. To start, try taking the information you want to remember and creating a mental image. For example, if you're studying biology and need to remember the parts of a plant, you might picture a giant plant with labels for each part: roots, stem, leaves, and flowers, floating around like balloons. Each balloon could have a different color, making it even more memorable. Here's a fun story to illustrate this technique. Meet Lily, a student preparing for a science quiz. Instead of just reading her textbook, she decided to visualize the information. She imagined a garden filled with different plants, each labeled with vibrant colors. The roots were long and winding. The stem was a sturdy tower. The leaves were fluttering like flags, and the flowers were bursting with color. When it was time for the quiz, Lily could easily picture her garden and recall each part without any stress. Another great way to use visualization is to create mind maps. Start with a central idea and branch out with related concepts, turning each branch into a vivid image. For example, if you want to remember the causes of World War I, draw a central circle labeled causes and branch out to different bubbles representing alliances, militarism, imperialism, and nationalism. Visualizing the connections helps reinforce your memory. The key lesson from this chapter is that visualization can make information more memorable. By creating vivid mental images and using mind maps, you'll find that recalling information becomes a fun and engaging process. Chapter 23: Rhymes and Songs. Let's explore the musical side of memory. Have you ever noticed how catchy songs and rhymes stick in your head? That's because music and rhythm can significantly enhance your ability to remember information. By turning facts into melodies, you can create a more enjoyable learning experience. One effective way to use music for memorization is to create your own tunes or rhymes. For example, if you're trying to remember the order of the planets, you could make up a silly song that lists them. Sing it to the tune of a popular melody, and soon you'll be singing about Mercury, Venus, Earth, and the rest without a hitch. Here's an entertaining story to illustrate this technique. Meet Ben, a student who struggled to remember his multiplication tables. Instead of just reciting the numbers, he decided to turn them into a rap. He created catchy phrases for each multiplication fact and practiced rapping them with his friends. Before long, Ben could recite his multiplication tables with ease, all while having a blast. Another fun approach is to use existing tunes for your study material. You can take the words of a lesson and fit them into the melody of a well-known song. Imagine singing your history notes to the tune of Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. Not only will the rhythm help you remember the information, but you'll also have fun singing it. The key lesson from this chapter is that using rhymes and songs can enhance your memory. By turning information into catchy tunes or raps, you'll find that learning becomes a joyful and effective experience. Chapter 24: Practical Applications of Memory Techniques. Now that you've explored various memory techniques, let's talk about how you can apply them in your daily life. Memory techniques aren't just for school, they can help you in various situations, from remembering names to mastering skills. One of the first practical applications is using memory techniques to learn new languages. If you're trying to remember vocabulary words, create vivid images for each word. For instance, if you're learning Spanish and need to remember the word perro, you could picture a dog wearing a sombrero dancing on a table. Associating the word with a silly image makes it more memorable. Let's look at a fun story illustrating this application. Meet Clara, a student who wanted to learn French. Instead of just memorizing vocabulary, she created a story for each word. For chat, Clara imagined a fancy cat wearing a beret and painting on an easel. By using her imagination, she was able to recall vocabulary words effortlessly and even impress her friends with her fluency. Another practical application is using memory techniques for exams. When preparing for a big test, try creating visual notes or flashcards. Use colors, images, and mnemonics to reinforce your learning. For example, if you're studying for a biology exam, create flashcards with diagrams that connect the concepts. The visual association will help you remember the material better. The key lesson from this chapter is that memory techniques can be applied in various aspects of life, from learning languages to preparing for exams. By using these techniques creatively and practically, you'll enhance your learning experience and make it more enjoyable. Chapter 25: Advanced Memory Techniques. Welcome to the exciting world of advanced memory techniques. Now that you've learned the fundamentals of memorization, it's time to take your skills to the next level. Just like a superhero training to harness their powers, you can master advanced methods that will make you a memory champion. One powerful technique is called the method of loci, also known as the memory palace. Imagine a grand building or a familiar place, like your house or school, and fill it with the things you want to remember. For example, if you need to remember a grocery list, visualize placing each item in a different room of your house. Picture a giant loaf of bread sitting on your couch, apples hanging from the chandelier, and a gallon of milk spilling onto your kitchen floor. When you need to recall your list, simply take a mental stroll through your memory palace. Let's dive into a fun story to illustrate this method. Meet Leo, a student who had to remember his entire science project, which included various concepts, definitions, and experiments. Instead of stressing out, he created a memory palace in his mind. He imagined walking through his house, with the living room filled with diagrams of cells, the kitchen stocked with models of the solar system, and the bedroom lined with charts about ecosystems. As Leo mentally walked through his house, he could easily recall each part of his project and present it flawlessly. Another advanced technique is chunking. This method involves breaking information into smaller, more manageable pieces. This is especially useful when trying to memorize long numbers or lists. For example, instead of trying to remember 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 0 as a whole, chunk it into 123, 456, and 7,890. The more you practice chunking, the easier it becomes to recall information. In a fun twist, let's look at a student named Mia, who was preparing for a math exam. She had to memorize several formulas, but they felt overwhelming. Instead of trying to remember them all at once, Mia decided to chunk them by topic. She grouped all the area formulas together, then the perimeter formulas, and finally the volume formulas. By breaking them into chunks, Mia found that she could easily recall each formula during her exam, leading to a great score. The key lesson from this chapter is that advanced memory techniques like the method of loci and chunking can greatly enhance your memorization skills. By creating vivid mental images and breaking information into smaller parts, you'll find that retaining knowledge becomes much easier and more enjoyable. Chapter 26: Overcoming Memory Challenges. As you continue your journey to becoming a memory master, it's important to recognize that challenges may arise. Everyone faces obstacles when trying to remember information, but the key is to develop strategies to overcome them. One common challenge is distractions. In today's fast-paced world, filled with notifications and interruptions, it can be difficult to focus. To combat this, create a distraction-free environment when studying or trying to memorize information. Find a quiet space, turn off your phone, and gather all the materials you need. This way, you can focus solely on the task at hand. Here's a story that illustrates this point. Meet Jake, a student who struggled to concentrate while studying at home because of the noise from his siblings. Instead of giving up, he decided to find a quiet spot in the local library. By eliminating distractions, Jake was able to focus on his studies and effectively use his memory techniques. When he returned home, he was confident and ready to ace his exam. Another memory challenge is anxiety. It's normal to feel nervous before a big test or presentation. To overcome anxiety, practice relaxation techniques like deep breathing or visualization. Picture yourself confidently delivering your speech or acing that test. By calming your mind and visualizing success, you'll be better prepared to remember the information you've studied. Let's hear about Sarah, a student who often felt anxious before exams. To combat her nerves, she practiced deep breathing exercises and visualized herself walking into the classroom calm and collected. On exam day, Sarah entered the room feeling relaxed and focused. As she tackled the questions, she found that her memory techniques kicked in, and she recalled everything she had studied. The key lesson from this chapter is that overcoming memory challenges is possible with the right strategies. By creating a distraction-free environment and practicing relaxation techniques, you can enhance your ability to remember information and perform at your best. Chapter 27, Putting It All Together. You've made it to the final chapter of your memory journey. Now it's time to put all the techniques you've learned together and create a personalized memory toolkit. Everyone's learning style is unique, so experiment with different methods and find what works best for you. Start by identifying areas where you want to improve your memory. Is it for school subjects, names, or everyday tasks? Once you know your goals, choose a few techniques that resonate with you. For example, if you're a visual learner, you might find that the method of Lorayne and mind mapping work best for you. If you love music, try turning information into catchy songs or rhymes. Here's a story to inspire you. Meet David, a student who wanted to improve his grades in history. He decided to combine multiple memory techniques to create a comprehensive study plan. David visualized a timeline of important events in his mind, used the link system to create stories for each event, and even set his notes to a rhythm he could sing along to. By incorporating different techniques, David found that he could remember complex information and even enjoy the learning process. It's also essential to practice regularly. Like any skill, memory techniques improve with time and repetition. Set aside time each week to review what you've learned and reinforce your memory. The more you practice, the stronger your memory will become. Finally, share your memory journey with others. Teach your friends or family members what you've learned. By explaining the techniques to someone else, you'll reinforce your understanding and help others improve their memory skills too. The key lesson from this chapter is that putting all your memory techniques together can create a powerful toolkit for success. By personalizing your approach, practicing regularly, and sharing your knowledge, you'll unleash the full potential of your memory. As we conclude this memory journey, it's important to reflect on the incredible power of memory techniques. You've learned a variety of methods, from storytelling and visualization to rhymes and the advanced method of Lorayne. Each technique offers a unique way to enhance your memory and make learning fun and engaging. Remember that everyone has different learning styles, and what works for one person may not work for another. The key is to experiment and find the techniques that resonate with you. Whether it's turning information into catchy songs or creating vivid mental images, use the methods that make the most sense for your learning process. As you continue your academic journey, take these tools with you. Use them not just for school, but in everyday life, whether you're trying to remember important dates, names, or even the ingredients for your favorite recipe. The skills you've developed will serve you well, helping you navigate the challenges of learning with confidence and creativity. So go ahead, embrace the power of your memory, and let your imagination run wild. With these techniques in your toolkit, you're well on your way to becoming a memory master. Keep practicing, keep exploring, and enjoy the adventure of learning.